The five of us sat in the living room of our cozy apartment. This little scenario has played out a few times when Lisa, my favorite bride, we've been married for 3 years, and I have hosted our parents. Unfortunately, this time it wasn't one of those pleasant Sunday dinners. My soon-to-be ex-wife sat on our couch with her parents, and my mom sat next to me in our favorite chair. I felt her squeeze my hand, assuring me of her support. However, I knew she was struggling with the promise she had made to me. I asked her not to speak during this conversation and to let me handle this on my own. She reluctantly agreed after I warned her of what was about to happen. The only thing she said after everyone arrived was to greet everyone. However, she had something to say, earlier. I remembered her words before my guests arrived. "I wish your father was here." I just nodded. I didn't have the heart to tell her I was glad he wasn't here. No son wants his father to watch his marriage fall apart. On top of that, I knew that he and Margaret, my mother-in-law, despised each other, and this meeting would escalate into World War III. There was no way my plan to solve this problem would have worked. I could almost hear his voice. "Son, do what you have to do, your mom, and I will be there for you." Then he would give me what I told you, so watch and smile. Okay, I lied. I missed him in his absence. But I needed things to go as smoothly as possible if I was going to get through this without losing myself. If he was here, that would be impossible. Of course, for things to go as I hoped, I would have to remain cold and impassive. A week of digesting the events of the last 7 days had put me under emotional stress. I hoped I was sober enough to accomplish this. This awkward silence was broken by my father-in-law. "Danny, thank you for meeting with us." I looked at him and noticed he looked tired. All 3 of us were the same way. Apparently there had been a few sleepless nights at the Thomas house. I really felt sorry for him. I liked my father-in-law. He was into a pretty good guy, although he could seem spineless at times when it came to his wife and daughter. On the other side of the table sat my mother-in-law, an angry dragon of the north, ready to attack and attack and attack. Margaret, "Don't call me Marge," could barely contain her contempt for me. It was too much to say that I was her dislike for stealing her daughter. The fact that I had defiled her innocent daughter before her wedding only added to her reasons why I should be publicly drawn and quartered. Of course, the fact that Lisa wasn't a virgin when I met her, well, let's not let facts get in the way of a valid reason for a witch hunt. I knew this encounter would be extremely difficult for her, and the thought made me smile. She would have to swallow her poison if they had any hope of saving this marriage. There couldn't be, but they weren't sure of that yet. Sitting between her parents was Lisa, dressed in jeans and a blouse. I thought she looked beautiful. She wasn't a model, but rather the pretty girl next door. Even with her eyes bright red from crying, I could still see the girl I had fallen in love with 5 years ago. When I looked at her, I suddenly found it hard to breathe, and my heart hammered against my ribs like they were an anvil. On the outside, I might have seemed cold and calm, but inside, the pain was still sharp. I didn't seem to be any better. Of course, I had little sympathy for her because it was her actions that had led to this encounter. However, it was my reaction that had derailed her little sister's wedding reception last Saturday. Without a doubt, Stephanie and Mike's wedding will be remembered by the guests for a long time. Lisa has been living with her parents ever since. We met face-to-face for the first time since the wedding. A few times when I was on the phone with her, and then I stopped taking her calls. I asked her why, and all her answers were basically pathetic excuses. I realized that I probably never knew my wife. I know this has been a very difficult time for both of you, but hopefully we can talk some things through and start trying to heal your marriage. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but there's really no reason to try to resuscitate something that's already dead. Fortunately, we don't have children yet. All that's left is to figure out how to bury this and start the divorce. "Danny," Lisa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want a divorce." I looked at her carefully and gritted my teeth, trying to say, "Calm down." "And I didn't want to catch my wife having her ex-boyfriend at her sister's wedding," I spat. I guess I wasn't hiding my anger well. "Don't say that, Daniel. the dragon said condescendingly, making my skin crawl with goosebumps. This isn't your home, Marge, and you can leave whenever you want. I could see her gasp as she suppressed her anger, but she shocked me and said nothing. Hell must have frozen over. Danny, I'm so sorry, Lisa whimpered. It was a mistake. A mistake? I said, trying not to grin. Given the reactions of those sitting on my couch, obviously I had failed. Tell me, Lisa, what exactly was the mistake? Was it getting so drunk at the reception that you decided to show everyone how good you were at dirty dancing with your ex-boyfriend? Or was it when I pulled you apart and you told me and anyone else who saw it that you didn't belong to me and you were dancing with whoever the hell you chose? Maybe it was my mistake. I kept my eyes on you. An hour later, I turned around and saw that you were gone. And then when I finally found you, you were just having fun with the little shit. I'm damn sure it wasn't a mistake when I hit him and kept hitting him until you started screaming that I was killing him. I might have made a mistake when I stopped, because when I turned to face you, the little coward ran away. So tell me, Lisa, where exactly was the mistake? You were dancing so close that when you looked down, you gasped, "Look what accidentally got stuck in me." Danny, it was just... I was drunk. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. It's pretty simple. I'm sure Marge told you about the birds and the bees. That's when the guy puts his thing in your thing. Of course, after you get married, there shouldn't be any other guys but your husband. Please, Danny, I'm sorry. It will never happen again. Danny, her father intervened. I know this seems really very bad indeed. I started to reply, but he held up his hand and continued. Okay, I know it's so bad. But it was a one-time thing, son. I know you two can handle it. You're strong enough to forgive her for this. Well, Mr. Thomas, I don't know if I can forgive a one-time thing or not, but it's not a one-time thing, is it, Lisa? I saw her face grow even paler as I turned to my father-in-law. It seems your daughter was such a caring big sister at Stephanie's bachelorette party that she took it upon herself to show her little sister how to have sex properly. Apparently, Stephanie was a quick learner. I got a great video earlier this week. It's amazing how good cell phone videos are these days. It may not be the same quality as the porn sites, but it was good enough to get a good look at the Thomas sisters. Lisa covered her face with her hands. Oh, God, she moaned. I wonder if Mike knows. I'm talking about the strippers in this story. Someone should tell him no, don't you think? I mean, he's going to believe this nonsense that it was a one-time mistake, isn't he? Phil and Marge were now as pale as their daughter. Lisa's sobs echoed through the grimly quiet room. I confess that what happened next surprised me. I thought that this little revelation concerning the stripper would end the encounter. I was wrong. At first, I was surprised that she had managed to keep quiet for so long. Then I thought she was going to try to undo the damage and try to get me to stay in the marriage. Well, at least until I screwed up and then Lisa would publicly divorce me. This was my mistake, I thought. It seems the dragon thought the best defense was offense, so she attacked. You sanctimonious shit, she growled. You sit there and act so smug and innocent. Margaret, please, Phil pleaded. No, I'm not going to let that little pissant blackmail our family, especially when I have proof that he's as guilty as Lisa. To say there was stunned silence from everyone in the room would be an understatement. Then she started rummaging through the backpack she calls a purse. A few moments later, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, she pulled out a small manila paper envelope. To be honest, I was a little disappointed that she didn't yell, "Ta-da!" Here, choke on this, she growled, tossing me the envelope. Inside, you'll find pictures of your car outside a roadside motel last month when you were supposed to be in Chicago on a business trip. There are also copies of your motel registration. My mother awed and squeezed my hand. The use of the name John Smith wasn't very original, Marge smirked as she continued, but the desk clerk wrote down your license plate number. Lisa covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Marge put her arms around her, trying to comfort her. It's all right, honey, she cooed softly. Mommy took care of it. I told all the women at church 2 weeks ago. I'm sure most of the people in town already know about it. When they hear what happened at the reception, they'll realize it was because he tricked you first. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I was shocked at how calm I was on the outside. The heart inside me was trying to pound through my chest, and my brain was screaming at me to slay the dragon. Maybe I was in shock. I looked through the contents of the bag and handed it to my mom. I noticed that she had tears coming to her eyes. I patted her hand gently and smiled. "Okay, Marge," I said calmly, turning my attention back to the beast. "Before you plan your own little CSI episode, you might want to refresh your detective skills." That business trip to Chicago was actually a training seminar my company sent me to in order to get certified. I have about 30 other participants who can vouch that I was at every boring session for all 4 days. While I was out of town, we put Lisa's car in service for routine maintenance. Want to guess whose car she drove while hers was in the service? One more little piece of information you might be interested in. Do you remember the names of the people who work with Lisa at Southside Medical Clinic? Come on, Marge. You remember Dr. Sammy, of course? Well, his full name is Dr. Samuel Jonathan Smith. But, my father-in-law muttered, he's older than me. Yes, it sounds like your little girl has daddy issues as well as latent whore tendencies. Best of luck with the counseling. Danny? Yeah, I know. It was just one time. I stood up and looked at the trio sitting on my couch. I didn't think I could last much longer, so I needed this to end quickly. I think we've already said everything that needed to be said. It's time for all of you to leave. Phil stood up and helped Lisa up. Marge remained motionless. At first I thought maybe she was having a seizure or maybe even a stroke, but no. She pulled herself together and stood up. Looking me straight in the eye, she let go of me. I expected better from you, Daniel. And I expected nothing good from you, Marge. You acted just like a smug, hypocritical bitch. Now get the hell out of my apartment. She left angry, but at least she left. Phil surprised me by hugging me tightly before he chased after her. Lisa was the only one left. When she looked at me with her beautiful green eyes, swollen with tears and so full of pain, I couldn't stop the tears in my own eyes. Danny, I can't tell you how ashamed I am. I'm so guilty. Not even half as much as I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry I wasted my love on someone like you. She sobbed and ran out the door. As I closed the door behind her, my emotions overwhelmed me. I rested my head against the door and lost the battle trying to hold back the tears. The simple fact was that I loved the lying slut, and she had hurt me in a way I had never felt before. I still didn't know why she cheated, but then even knowing the reason wouldn't change the fact that my marriage was dead. I knew my pain, anger, and depression wasn't going away anytime soon. My mom came over and hugged me. "Are you okay?" she said softly. "No, I'm here for a little while, but I'll get to happiness." "You know, your dad would be proud of the way you handled this. Do you know what you're going to do now?" I nodded. "Yeah, there's really not much to break up, so I think I'm going to take Marge's advice and make the best of it." "Yes, there really isn't much to do. So I think I'll take Marge's advice and go to as much trouble as possible. I will ask to serve Lisa when they leave their church on Sunday. I will also see if I can sue the good doctor and his clinic. Even if I can't win, I'll make sure he gets served at work. That should cause a scandal." "What about Mike and Stephanie?" "Mom, if someone sent me that video, they probably sent it to Mike. Even if they didn't, he needs to know. Maybe they can handle it. I hope they can. If they do, maybe it will stop any cheating in the future, and their marriage will last longer than the 3 years we've had. I email Stephanie and tell her she has a week to tell him herself before I do." She looked at me and smirked. "You're just like your father," she said, shaking her head. Too bad he couldn't have at least heard us meet. She smiled innocently and reached for her purse. Opening it, she pulled out a tape recorder. "He asked me to record this so he could hear it when I got home. You know, it almost killed him when he wasn't here today. He was disappointed when you asked him not to come. He understood, but I still think it hurt his feelings. Well, looks like I'll have plenty of time to catch up since most of my future plans are now flushed down the toilet." I shook my head slowly and sighed. "I feel like I wasted 5 years of my life." "No, you haven't. You just learned some very painful lessons. I hope you use it to make your next marriage even stronger. Next marriage? I'm not sure I'll ever trust another woman enough to marry her. She pulled back and smiled at me. Honey, you're 27. It's going to take a long time, but you'll find a lucky girl who's special enough for you to try again. My mom is the eternal optimist. I grinned. She reached out and kissed my cheek. I'm still expecting my grandchildren from you. We both laughed. The sound of our laughter calmed me down. I will be happy again someday,